Hello, I'm Anika from Made to Sew. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to do a shoulder adjustment, be that a narrow or wide shoulder adjustment on a cowl neck garment. I'm going to be working with the Made to Sew Aria pattern, but you can use this resource if you're working with a different cowl neck pattern. I talk about the differences that you might see in another pattern throughout the video. If you are new to completing a shoulder adjustment, I would recommend watching my standard shoulder adjustment video. In that video, I do a shoulder adjustment on a sort of simple shift dress or a block pattern. So it gives you a bit of an understanding of the process before we do it on a slightly more complicated pattern. I've traced off the Made to Sew Aria pattern in card for this example. And I've tried to record all of the details, so the fold line and the different cut lines. So this is the cut line if you're working with the with sleeves version. And then I have got the sleeveless version here as well. And I've traced out the front and the back pattern. Now, if you're working with a different cowl neck pattern, your pattern might look slightly different to mine. And the one thing to note is these fold lines here. So on the front and on the back of my pattern, I have a fold line. And this is how the neck is finished. So this fold line is actually the neck of the pattern. When the garment is finished, the fabric will fold on that fold line. And if I show you from the wrong side, you can see how the facing will either finish the neckline for the with sleeves version or finish the armhole for the sleeveless version. Your pattern may not have any information above the fold line because you simply may just be finishing with a seam allowance here. So everything above my ruler here might not exist. That is totally fine and you can still follow along with this video. If you've watched my standard shoulder adjustment video, you will know that there are two methods for completing a shoulder adjustment. If you have a minor change to make, you can make that adjustment on the end of the shoulder. If you have a more major change to make, then you'll need to be making that adjustment in the center of the shoulder. One of the differences with a cowl neck pattern is that the shoulder might not actually be very large. If you complete your shoulder adjustment by simply removing or adding to the end of the shoulder, you will of course be changing the width of the shoulder. This might not be an issue for you, but if you're removing a large amount from the shoulder, you might end up with a finished shoulder width that is narrower than you desire. It might not be wide enough to cover your bra strap. Therefore, my preferred method of reducing or increasing the size of the shoulder in a cowl neck is to actually do it in the neckline. That will change where the shoulder is sitting on the body, but it will do so without changing the actual width or length of that shoulder seam. To complete this adjustment, draw a horizontal line in the middle of the armhole. This line should be at a right angle to the center front or the grain line. Draw a vertical line that is parallel to the grain line and that sits within the neckline. If you haven't got the stitching line on your shoulder seam marked, you may wish to do that so that you know where the shoulder seam will finish and where the neckline will start. I would recommend completing this at least 2 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch away from the stitching line of the shoulder. For my example, I feel like I want to do a little bit more, so I'm going to go with 3 centimeters, approximately 1.25 inches. If your pattern only has a seam allowance after the fold line and it doesn't have any of this facing, you would just take this vertical line to the edge of the paper. If you're working with the Made to Sew Aria pattern, you're going to want to continue this line all the way through because we want to make this adjustment onto the facing as well. The shape of the facing at the armhole needs to be an exact match of the shape of the body at the armhole. We're going to need to draw another horizontal line in the middle of the facing of the armhole, ideally at exactly the same distance from the fold line down. So you can measure this to double check. Cut along the lines that you've just drawn, the horizontal lines, 2 of them if you have a facing with your cowl neck, and the vertical line to remove this complete pattern piece. Once the pattern piece has been removed, you can then complete the shoulder adjustment. Match the horizontal line. Slide the pattern piece towards the center front if you want to reduce the length of the shoulder. Move it towards the side seam if you want to make a wide shoulder adjustment. For this example, I'm going to make a narrow shoulder adjustment and I'm going to remove 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters. Measure from the vertical line the adjustment that you wish to make, either towards the center front or center back if you're reducing the size of the shoulder, or towards the side seam if you're increasing the size of the shoulder. Match the horizontal lines, slide the pattern piece to meet your newly drawn vertical line. Stick in position. To complete the adjustment, reconnect the shape of the armhole. Using a French curve, curve from the original underarm to the new shoulder. Consider the shape and the differences between the front armhole and the back armhole. The front armhole has a soft curve, whereas the back armhole is generally straighter, finishing with a hook shape. If your pattern also has a facing, you're going to need to create exactly the same curve along the facing. You can do that by trying to draw the same shape using your French curve, or an easier method would be to fold the pattern along the fold line. Of course, this will be easier for you working in paper. Trace the shape of the new armhole onto the side of the facing. I would also recommend removing a small amount from the armhole shape of the facing, 2 millimeters or 1/16 of an inch. This is what I did with the original Made to Sew Aria pattern, and this is for favoring. It keeps the facing from being visible from the front of the garment. For the Made to Sew Aria pattern, you'll also need to adjust the shape of the with sleeves facing, simply blending it back in for any adjustment that has been made. Complete the same adjustment on the front and back pattern. It's always a good idea to true your pattern pieces when you're done. This might include double checking the size of the armhole. Measure the stitching line of the armhole on the front of the pattern and on the back of the pattern and compare that to your sleeve. Ideally, the sleeve should be slightly larger than the armhole, but as long as the sleeve is the same size as the armhole, it still should fit in. Make up a sample to double check the adjustment that you've done. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more sewing tips.